Are you worried about today's dire financial situation?
Put simply, I would argue the Biden economic plan is working.
The storms on Wall Street continue today after regulators seized the assets of Silicon Valley Bank, marking the largest bank failure since the 2008 financial crisis.
Do you worry you'll have enough to pay your mortgage, pay your children's college tuition, enough to retire?
I believe our banking system remains strong.
Regional banks in focus once again today as the market digests the fallout of the First Republic failure.
You have questions, we have answers. It's the Gold Standard with Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn.
Thanks for joining us. It is the Gold Standard Radio Show. Ken Russo, Jennifer Horn, back together again. And I'm excited because, you know what? Ken Russo, I always loved, well, I actually hated school, but I was a good student. So
Absolutely.
I was good at school.
I can tell.
Can you tell?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
A++.
Absolutely.
Not always, trust me. But we're going to go back to school today.
We are.
School's back in session.
Yes.
On the Gold Standard.
Bueller. Yeah.
Do you love that movie?
Parts of it.
Only
It's
parts?
a bit outdated, but yeah, I like it.
Come on.
Yeah, I
We're
mean,
of a
it's a
certain
classic.
age.
Yeah.
Please. All right, so let's get started because we're going to do the timeline. How did we go from real to fake? The timeline from real money, backed by gold, to fiat money, backed by, nothing but air.
And there's a lot of it. There is a lot of it.
A lot of air floating around out there. Hot air mostly
Big bubble.
comes from the politicians, for
Big
sure.
numbers, big bubble.
Yeah.
You know what that leads to?
Tell me.
Big pop.
Big problems.
That's
Big
right.
pop.
Yeah. And the question is right, how do we protect ourselves from those eventual problems?
And I think that's what this is all about. You know, when people say, you talk about the problems that we see, we know we have the problems, we feel that our buying power has been reduced. We all feel that.
You're kidding me.
Well, I know, but what do? So we can protect ourselves. We can either run and hide, or we can take the personal responsibility. We can protect ourselves, protect what we've worked for, protect our family. And a lot of people are right now questioning whether or not gold or silver is right for them, precious metals. It's the time. And we're going to talk about how we got there. MidasGoldGroup.com, by the way, if you want to check out the website.
Yeah. How do you protect your buying power, right, America?
It's a question.
You know, this is what it's all about, people.
Absolutely.
There's a difference, Jen, between trying to increase your wealth and build wealth versus trying to protect your wealth.
And both of it is necessary, we'd say, right? We
It
don't
is.
give advice here, but you have to figure you want to earn more money, you want to create wealth for yourself, but you also at the same time have to protect what you've already socked away.
Now, gold has a long track record of holding your purchasing power and holding your buying power, but it also has a track record of increasing that buying power.
In fact, over time, gold has continued to not only hold its value, but actually increase.
But I hate when people try to compare it to a great stock, or they try to compare it to a great piece of real estate, or they even try to compare it to a crypto Bitcoin. It's not that. What it is hopefully you could make money speculating and you could make money and do some smart investing along the way, stick to the course, but you have to come to a point and say, how do I protect and preserve a portion of that? How do I keep my buying power on some of that money that I've made, saved, or possibly made through investing? And how do I diversify it?
Right.
That's where kind of gold and silver really comes into play.
It's a great explanation. You don't put everything into gold. You want to earn money in other places, but this is your safety. This is kind of hedging your bet against all the craziness that's out there.
Yeah, and people always say, well, what did gold do today? Well, it doesn't really matter. You know, it's a process of diversifying, having purchasing power out of the system, and having something like real money, which gold is real money versus our paper currency, and we could start the timeline of real money to fiat money.
When does it start officially, would you say?
Well, I mean, it goes back, but I would say let's go back to the beginning of the 1800s.
Ooh, how old were you back then?
I wasn't yet a dream.
Not even a twinkle
No,
in the eye.
not yet,
Okay,
no.
way back to the 1800s.
Actually, in 1816, we saw some of the first gold standards.
Okay.
You know, check this idea out, Jen. Money was actually backed by something,
Amazing.
like a tangible asset.
Right.
You know, so it wasn't like, just free for all. Let's just have a big party, monopoly money. There was limits.
If you had a $20 bill, you had a $20 gold piece.
That's right. Or at least some sort of balance. And then we saw Great Britain and then also Portugal, Australia, Canada, And Germany in the 1871s actually had a gold standard. In the 1900s, we saw in the late 1800s, the United States was messing around with that idea of having money backed by gold. But in 1900, officially, the United States of America went on a gold standard.
Okay.
Which means that all of the money that was created, or our paper notes, they were backed by something.
Right.
Backed by gold.
And they even said that.
Yeah, and actually, I had a couple of gold coins on the desk here, and a $20 gold bill.
I love when you bring money with you, Ken. It's always exciting.
Now, this is a $20 gold bill, Jen, from 1928.
And why do you call it the gold bill?
Well, it says gold certificate right on it, and right on the bill it says $20 in gold coin payable to the bearer on demand. So basically, this was like a claim ticket.
To get your gold.
Think of this. You could have gone to the bank in 1928, and you would have had this $20 St. Gaudens piece. And you could converted this $20 bill, and they would have given you one $20 gold coin.
They were
or
interchangeable.
vice versa.
Right.
This $20 bill today, a regular $20 bill, is probably worth maybe 8 or 9 cents.
Sadly.
The $20 gold piece
Tell me.
from that period is probably worth at least $2,400, $2,500.
That's what I was going to say, over $2,000 probably.
That's a
right?
huge difference.
Huge.
It's an example of one product not holding its value, the paper money, because of some of the things we're going to talk about next, and one other product like gold, which has historically always been worth something and has held its purchasing power and built purchasing power over the last, 120 years.
Which really does hedge your bet over the inflation that we're seeing. And that's what we talk about. So here's what we need you to do today. Call Midas Gold Group if you are interested in getting started in gold and silver, or if you're looking for a new buyer. America First Patriots, veteran-owned, 855-322-4653, 855-322-GOLD, always MidasGoldGroup.com. And you can even text. If that is more your preference, you can text the word gold to 232425, and Midas will get right back to you.
Now, here's where the wheels start turning.
All right, give it to me.
Of the underbelly.
You get very excited. You're a good history teacher here.
Well, I'm trying. I was told I might be a good teacher.
Yeah.
In 1913, not that long after we went on a complete gold standard,
Right.
the bankers already started thinking,
Say, hey.
This isn't really, we'd like to be a little bit more reckless. We would like to be able to control the money. We would like to be able to understand how much we can print. I think we can probably do a better job than, central bankers could do a better job than just the people understanding, what's happening.
Well, they're the smart ones, of course.
The Federal Reserve Bank in 1913 was formed, with the famous story of Jekyll Island.
Tell us.
Well, there's a few bankers that were very, very influential, and they all kind of went to this place. I believe it's in Georgia, Jekyll Island, and they kind of had a little powwow, maybe a barbecue and some drinks, some cigars.
Was there evil laughing?
I'm sure there was. And they spoke about how they can become the central bankers of the United States and control the monetary supply. And they succeeded. So since 1913, we've had a central bank. We then saw the central bank start to work its magic and blow up a bubble, the Roaring '20s, okay? Sure. And that led to a huge stock market crash in the Great Depression of 1929. And then that was a great reason in 1933 for President FDR, Roosevelt, to take the dollar off of that gold standard. That was the first time that they devalued the dollar by 40%. And they made the ownership of gold for United States citizens illegal.
Now, what did people do at that time when that happened?
Well, I don't think everybody turned in their gold. I mean, they were ordered to turn in their gold, or they were threatened with a huge fine or even prison term. Imagine that. And $10,000 fine in 1933 was a huge deal. A lot of money. Some people turned in their gold. They melted it down. They put it back out on the market at about $34 an ounce. They paid people $20.67 and then boosted the price up by 75% in a year, put some of the gold back on the market. But for United States citizens, in all essence, money was not backed by gold anymore.
Right. That was the end.
It was the beginning of fiat money. Now, it wasn't totally fiat yet because as we're going to see, in 1944, we had something called the Bretton Woods Agreement. The Bretton Woods Agreement establishes the United States dollar as the world reserve currency. So it gives the United States dollar credibility.
Sure.
It allowed other countries to still convert their dollars into gold. So at this particular moment, gold still, it was pegged at $35 an ounce. The U.S. dollar, to some degree, was legitimate because other countries of the world could still convert their dollars into physical gold, which is important.
Now, if you want to talk to the folks at Midas Gold Group, just take a quick pause here with a couple minutes left, and we're going through the history, the timeline of how money went from real money to fake money.
Yeah, and I know it's a lot, Jen, to take
It
in
is.
all at one time. But basically, the point is that we did have money at one time that was actually
Backed
very
by something.
rock solid,
Yeah.
and you can trust it. And the money today, through all of these events, has just become more and more like monopoly money. And now we're reaching a point where we're losing tremendous buying power year after year after year.
855-322-GOLD. We feel it year after year after year. You can really see it now. It may have been kind of the slow trickle, but now we know it, we see it, we feel it in our everyday life. 855-322-GOLD, 855-322-4653 from Midas Gold Group. You can also text the word gold to 232425 and always at MidasGoldGroup.com. Now, Ken, before the break, let's talk a little bit more because we're now kind of up into the 40s. We're going into...
We could skip right to 1965.
Lyndon Johnson.
Yeah, President Kennedy was assassinated. There was rumors that President Kennedy wanted to make silver more important to the dollar. That kind of got nixed. Lyndon Johnson comes in and they strip all silver from coins in 1965.
Wow.
That's why the silver coinage, like quarters and dimes and $half pieces, were 90% silver up to 1965.
Not anymore.
No, not at all. It's all clad. Some of the Kennedy $half from 65 to 69 were 40% and whatnot, but they slowly started to take all of the silver out of our coinage. And back in 1933, they took the gold, out of the U.S. money, basically. So little by little, we start reaching a point where Federal Reserve notes and fiat money starts coming more and more into play as we start progressing through the late 70s, late 60s and early 70s.
Now, I'm very excited that we are where we are because we're going to come back with Richard Nixon.
It's starting to get a little bit more juicy at this point where things are really going to start to pick up steam.
You see some corruption, you see the craziness of politics coming to play, and we're going to have all of that. The story of how our money has become backed by nothing. You can call Midas Gold Group 855-322-4653, 855-322-GOLD. It's a Gold Standard Radio Show. Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn.
Dr. Gorka here. You're listening to The Gold Standard with your hosts, Ken Russo from veteran-owned Midas Gold Group and Jennifer Horn. Owning private money in the form of physical gold and silver is perhaps more important than ever to your long-term financial security. As U.S. banks fail, the Biden administration sends hundreds of billions abroad while depleting our strategic oil reserves. However, the biggest financial threat may be coming from within: central bank digital currency. The patents have been filed and the big banks have released plans for implementation. Midas Gold Group sees tyrannical implications, the end of cash, the end of financial privacy, big government able to see your every purchase. Could there be ties to social credit? Hear more commentary on the political and economic issues that affect your financial security right here on The Gold Standard. You can create your own gold standard with a call to Midas Gold Group, 855-322-GOLD. That's 855-322-4653, MidasGoldGroup.com.
Welcome back. It's a Gold Standard Radio Show with Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn. Happy to have you along with us today. And we are kind of going through this timeline of how real money backed by gold became fiat money backed by nothing. And before the break, Ken, we were in the mid-60s or in 1965-ish. Kennedy has been assassinated. You've got Lyndon Johnson, who has come into the presidency. You've got Vietnam. There's chaos. The Red Scare is going on. A lot of people will still remember that in this audience. And the big question is, how do we pay for all of this?
Well, that becomes more and more of a head
Always
scratcher,
the question,
right?
right?
Yeah. Now, these other countries, like France and other countries, started to notice, well, the United States is starting to take on a lot of deficits. We have all these dollars. We can still convert those dollars into gold based on Bretton Woods.
Right.
So they started doing that in mass. Now, the problem was the United States gold started to run out. So we, in essence, had a default on the Bretton Woods Agreement.
Because we had no gold.
And that's when in 1971, which is a very important year for a lot of stuff that's going on right now, Richard Nixon, our pal.
Yeah, he sometimes visits us on the program.
They had to do something to stop what was going on because the United States obviously wasn't going to be able to honor their commitment of converting all of those dollars to gold. So they just stopped the convertibility of of the dollar into gold. And, and that's when in 1971, President Nixon took the United States and the rest of the world completely off of the gold standard.
So we went from the beginning of the end to the end, basically, of the gold
Pretty
standard.
quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was the beginning of full fiat money. And that means that all currencies can float in, value against the dollar. Gold was also able to trade freely. It was no longer pegged. So the price of gold in 1971 was around $35 per ounce, and now it's over $2,000 per ounce.
Right.
A dollar in 1971 is now worth about 15 cents. So that's the relationship as we get into a more fiat monetary system controlled by our Fed, which is the central bank, as they loan money to the United States government. Government produces these bonds out of thin air, and then they pay interest also on that borrowed money, which is a crazy, crazy system. The Congress is the only entity that's supposed to create money, not the Federal Reserve Bank, but that's the kind of situation we're in right now. 1974, President Ford allowed the United States citizens to own gold again. And that was another quick way to say we're also going to become, bed partners with Saudi Arabia, and we're going to start the petrodollar.
Interesting.
Yes, which also corresponded with that. And then we saw another bubble created, 1987, the stock market bursts. Also in 1987 was very important, Jen, because a lot of this computerized trading and derivatives started. A lot of that with Alan Greenspan. Yes, the same Alan Greenspan, okay? And then we saw another huge bubble, irrational exuberance in 1996. And this is all possible because of the Fed, and the system is allowed to change interest rates. They're allowed to change monetary.
Manipulating.
That's right. They create big bubbles, and then they burst. They create big bubbles, and then they burst. So the question now is today is, are we in the midst of creating a big bubble?
Right.
Or are we in a big bubble based on what's happened in the last, 10, 15 years?
And
especially,
what happens if it bursts?
There's a time and place for everything. And you have to ask yourself, is now a time, based on all of this history, is it a time to be more careful? Is it a time to try and protect, like we were talking about before, some of the money that you've made,
right,
some of the money that you've invested and it's worked out, whether it's skill or luck, who cares? Yeah, the point is, how do we protect that? We saw another bubble, 2000, the dot-com crash.
Sure.
Then everybody was convinced to put money into real estate as interest rates were manipulated.
Because they were down to 2%, right? I mean, they had started to come down anyway.
And then wonderful Wall Street created these subprime mortgage, things and certified mortgage-backed securities, CMOs, I believe, mortgage obligations, and then they packaged them together and just greed and, corruption to the nth degree. And then you also had President Bush announce that we were going to start a war on terror in 2002.
Which is not free.
Listen to this. They originally said that was going to cost $75 billion, and it's cost over, 8 to 10 trillion. Imagine that.
Still
how
going.
Crazy. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And then we had the subprime mortgage crisis in 2008. And what happened? We came up with this new term, quantitative easing. Quantitative Easing 1, 2, 3, Operation Twist by Ben Bernanke, who they ended up giving a Nobel Prize over the last couple of years. I guess all you have to do is print unlimited money and lie.
You look like a genius.
Just support Wall Street. I could have done that. I don't know if I'd been able to sleep with myself, but you just see a pattern now, Jen, of bubbles being created, enormous debt. Do people realize that the debt when President Reagan took over in 1980 was about $800 to $900 billion?
It seems like nothing now.
Then it went to about $5 trillion a little after 2000. And now we're at $34 trillion. We're going to be at $50 trillion probably, later on in this decade or possibly by 2030.
We can't play the interest on it.
They said that Social Security is probably going to run out in the early 2030s.
Right.
The point being is that no matter who's been elected, no matter who's running the central bank, the only thing that these people, I guess, could do is lie, be corrupt, print trillions and trillions of dollars out of thin air, and borrow and create enormous, unlimited debt.
Right.
I guess that's the system that we've created throughout this entire timeline. COVID was just another excuse in 2020 to provide tens of trillions of dollars to a world and the U.S. economy through more fake money. And now the banks are all on these programs to support their unrealized losses. So when you talk about the privacy and the value and the security of our money, and when you talk about this timeline, the privacy has become obviously next to nil.
Sure.
Okay. The value of our money, $1 back in 1933 is now worth 4 cents. $1 back in 1971 is now worth 15 cents. The value of our money continues to diminish, and the security of our money, because of all this debt and because the banks being unsafe and the system being so much speculation and so much gambling and so much leverage, so much margin, that's what they refer to it as, based on debt, the safety of our money is also in jeopardy. So because of this timeline of when the first central bank was started here in the United States back in 1913 that actually succeeded, being the Fed, to now, we've gone through many bubbles and a lot of those bubbles have burst. Unfortunately, now the bubble is bigger than ever, and the safety and the value of our money, it's under attack. So the question is, like we talked about before, what can you do about that to kind of distance yourself from what's coming? It's inevitable. Just the question is when. How can you get a bunch of purchasing power out of the system, out of the stock market, in your own possession? And that's where gold comes in, because stuff like this, Jen, that's where it's always come in. Here in the United States for, yes, over a century, but, it's been money for thousands of years. So history does matter. And based on this timeline, I would just tell you that today is we're in a situation that is more risky than ever based on all of this fake money that's been created and all of this enormous debt.
And what do you want to do? Do you want to just sit around and wait for the bubble to burst before you come up with the solution? Or do you want to protect yourself, protect your family, protect the money that you've worked so hard to earn? So many of us, we really do work hard, and you want to keep that safe. Keep your purchasing power intact. 855-322-4653 is the number for Midas Gold Group. You can go see them in person in Thousand Oaks, California, or in Phoenix, Arizona. This isn't a dark and dingy call center. These are people that will help you, present you with options. 855-322-GOLD, 855-322-4653. You can also check out the website, MidasGoldGroup.com, or text the word gold to 232425. And Midas will get back to you. And Ken, this is more important than ever, because we can't tell you when the bubble's going to burst. We just know that the bubble will burst.
Well, you have to prepare, Jen. And also
us
being an Arizona-based company, I love Carrie Lake.
Yeah.
And that stuff that came out with Jeff DeWitt and some of the things that she said. I mean, that's what a politician and that's what somebody who's fighting for America should be all about. I love her.
I love her too.
So that's it. We'll do whatever we can to try and support the message.
Yeah.
We like to work with certain people because they support a message of being proud to be American and proud to be here in the best country in the world, and that's the way we should be, in our opinion.
And really, this is all about freedom. Gold is about freedom. It's about freedom from the markets. It's from freedom, the politicians,
sovereignty.
the overspending, the crazy banks. Yeah. Get yourself away from that system. 855-322-4653. Protect yourself. 855-322-GOLD for Midas Gold Group. MidasGoldGroup.com, of course. And you can text GOLD to 232425. What a pleasure to do this with
Yes.
you today, Ken. Thanks for joining us. It's a Gold Standard Radio Show with Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn.